I'm going to stop you for a second because when I use hybrid, I think I'm using it in a different way. It sounds like when you talk about hybrid, you're talking about a combination of self-paced and then online, in person, because I think you're using it in a different way than I'm used to.
Sure, and I think traditionally we think of hybrid as sometimes face to face and sometimes online.
Well,
And
let me stop you for a second. When I think of hybrid, I think of one class, and some people are present and some people are remote. That was my
uh,
version of hybrid. Yeah. So
yeah,
let's talk
so
about yours. Yeah.
oh sure, of course, and I think that's another way that people can think about hybrid learning, but it is that's I think of that as like a subset of hybrid learning.
Hmm.
It's and when I really think of hybrid learning, I think of content delivered in multiple modalities.
Mm.
And so, how is that multiple modality happening? Is it you know is it a video and then an interactive game? Is it something? I think of hybrid a little bit more of a macroscopic view of multiple
Right.
modalities to deliver that content. And
That
so
makes sense. Yeah.
the way that we did it, we had a self-paced course, then with a webinar skill practice. That was the way that we defined our two modalities for delivering the content.
So, uh, and is everything you do now hybrid? Can talk a little bit about now
Yes.
what that looks like in your company. That you know.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so it's everything that we now deliver. All of our leadership development content is all hybrid now. We have two courses that are only web-based training because there was really no value in doing a skill practice with them, and
Hmm.
that was a really in-depth discussion as well. We actually had to go take a deep dive into each one of our courses that we offered, and it's like, where's the value that someone needs to practice?
Mm.
And because the whole idea of having a skill practice is you're going to be practicing a skill, and so what information can be pulled out and be
Got
done
it.
in a simulated scenario, in an interactive hotspot, in a video, and whatever else we need to do for the web-based training. But what are some things that we need to, as a facilitator, facilitate that learning?
Okay.
And
That
so
makes sense. Yeah.
so we really had to really get a deep dive, and there's some really great conversations within our team about how we would, what needed to go where. And two of the courses, as we began to discuss it, were it really was there's really learners can get everything they need just from this web-based training. There's really
Mm.
nothing that we would need to facilitate to help them get a greater understanding in this. It's really, not to say that we weren't important, but we can deliver this content in these certain ways that they're really going to be able to get it and understand it. And so there was some really, like I said, great discussions that happened. Lots of intense building that needed to be built, and there were some bumps in the road at the beginning. Of course, our leaders were hesitant.
Hmm. Hmm.
It did take some convincing of our leadership. We're like, look, we don't know when we're going to be face to face ever again. We don't know when this is going to happen. But our leaders, they're at home. They still need to be able to continue to grow and be the best leaders that they can be. And so this is how we can deliver that product to them.
Hmm.
And so it was a matter of selling it to our leaders. And, thankfully for them, they were like, all right, let's try it out. So,
That one of the things that people were challenged with in your area is that when you start doing this sort of hybrid learning and everybody's at home, all of a sudden the things that were easy to do in a classroom are much more difficult. So
yes.
you hand out maybe printed material, you set up things on somebody's computer for the class. You can do all that when you control the classroom, but when you don't. So do you have any challenges in that area where you've got to deal with all the different kinds of configurations that people have at home when you're trying to teach a class?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest challenges that we had was how do we deliver the resources to our learners?
Hmm.
And originally we had it built where they would have to download it from our learning management system. But we found relatively quickly on that they would download one of the materials and not four of them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Things were getting misplaced and lost, and that caused a challenge because they needed to have their course journal completed when they went into the skill practice. And so we made a little pivot within that. And so then we now embedded that downloadable content. We took it out of the LMS and built it into the courses that we were developing.
Hmm.
so that
Mhm.
way, and then they had to download that stuff before they could progress.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
and so then we had considerably less of that. Oh, I didn't download it. Oh, I lost it. And things like that. But we started to see some of the additional resources, the supplemental resources. Some of those were getting misplaced. Like the journals, they had the journals, but the other stuff, job aids and things like that, were getting lost. And so then
Hmm.
we did an additional pivot later on. Was we just put everything into one big PDF, so there wasn't multiple PDFs for someone to download. Download one PDF. It's at the beginning. You can't go any further in the course until you download. It's learning objectives. Then it's here's a journal. You need to download it, and if you don't download it, you can't go any further. And
Interesting.
so that has helped a lot with that misplacement. And I
Hmm.
think it also, one of the other big challenges was, our learners, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of people that very kind of set in their ways, is like, this is the way things we've always done things. And to move away from writing things down on a piece of paper to
Mm.
typing inside of a PDF, editable PDF, that was a transition for our leaders as well. And so we had to have a lot of patience
Hmm.
with them, and guidance, and providing those guidance for the people. It's like, okay, so this is how you do it. You click in here and do, and some people that they just weren't familiar with how to edit inside of a PDF.
Well, that's interesting. And I saw the same thing early on because I volunteer for some organizations and just teaching people how to use Zoom and how to unmute themselves and how to set a background. There was a lot of technical training that had to happen before you could progress into the online training. So it
Oh,
sounds like
sure.
you had this, yeah, same
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah. And our coordinators were absolutely fantastic with helping to build that infrastructure, because they took a lot of those basic procedural questions and provided support for our leaders. With the way we deliver our webinars is it's a facilitator with a producer, and so the producer is the gets all those technical questions, so that way me as a facilitator, I can facilitate the course. I can go through everything that we need to go through, and I can leave it that way, and our producer provides that support on the background. They are invaluable. There's no way that we'd be successful if we didn't have a facilitator producer setup.
That's an excellent way to do it. Yeah, because it's very challenging when you're trying to do it yourself.
Yeah,
Very
because then you have to
challenging.
stop talking, and you're like, okay, let me answer your question, let me problem solve. And if it doesn't work the first time, then you're 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes of dead air, and everyone else is like, okay, well, I'm gonna go get a coffee, and then you've
Yeah,
lost the audience. So,
yeah, they disengaged. It sounds like this also gave you the opportunity, it sounds like, to go really deep dive into all the training that you offer in a way that you might not have had to do. You wouldn't have had to do it. And
oh
so
yeah,
it sounds like you've
definitely.
benefited from that as well, kind of working your way through all the things that you offer and asking, how best to deliver it, or should we even be delivering it? So it sounds like you did a lot of pruning and paring of your.
Yes, very much so. Because there was a lot of content that, as we taught it face to face, it was fluff. It was, the basic stuff that you would normally do in a face to face course. It's unnecessary, as we began to drill down and say, what do they actually need? And so,
Yeah.
some activities that were like, oh, there's a lot of value in this. How can we translate this so someone could do it self-paced on their own? And
Hmm.
so it was really, for me, as a lifelong learner, I really, like I said, I come from academia. I'm always a
Hmm.
lifelong learner. That's how I'm always going to classify myself. To understand content at a depth that I never would have imagined just knowing it pre-pandemic, I thought was just out. It was just really great for my growth in understanding what we're delivering, how we deliver it, understanding the learning theories behind we're doing it. And I
Hmm.
was, to be able to really go into my depths, as I mentioned earlier, my master's is in instructional design, but it's a specialization with game theory and design. And so
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
able to design those web-based trainings that we have to implement those gamification type of techniques into that, while getting that concept at a greater depth, it was exciting for me. I was just, as I said, it was a lot of hard work, but just it filled me with so much excitement and so much passion that I was looking forward every day. It's like, what can I do now? It's like, oh, I think I can do this. I can, and so yeah,
Do we need
it's
another
it's been
pandemic
fascinating.
to interest you in?